U.S. President Joe Biden has signed a bill into law authorizing billions of dollars in military aid for Ukraine. Lawmakers passed the $61 billion package over the weekend, ending a months-long standoff in Congress. Biden said supplies would now soon be on their way.
I'm making sure the shipments start right away. In the next few hours, literally a few hours, we're going to begin sending in equipment to Ukraine for air defense munitions, for artillery, for rocket systems, and armored vehicles. You know, this package is literally an investment, not only in Ukraine's security, but in Europe's security, in our own security.
Now, hundreds of thousands of troops have been called up to fight for Ukraine since Russia launched its invasion 2 years ago. Many of them have not returned from the front line. DW spoke to a mother whose family has paid a high price.
Natalia Studnik had 3 sons when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
This is my son, my youngest son.
Last summer, Natalia buried her youngest, Oleksiy. He served in some of the bloodiest battles of the war.
My youngest was in Solidar. After Solidar, he was in Bakhmut. After Bakhmut, he was in Kherson. And he was near Antonivka in Kherson. There's a country village called Antonivska. He was killed there.
The day of Oleksiy's death, Natalia tried to convince him to leave the army. She feared he'd share the same fate as her eldest son, Serhiy, who had just been reported missing. Her middle son, Andriy, is also listed as missing. Natalia hopes her older sons are alive, but there's been no confirmation. She likes to remember them as they appear in these photos.
This is my eldest son, Serhiy. This is my Andriusha. This is Alyosha. They were happy. My boys can do everything, cooking and baking. They grew up well. They grew up together. I have boys who read a lot. All 3 of them graduated from music school.
Natalia is supported by her daughters-in-law, Olena and Olesya. They call her mother.
We try to call whenever possible to ask how Mom is doing.
I live closer, so she comes to us, sits with her grandchildren. My mother is also retired, but if there's no one...
We ask Mom to come and she does.
Since their husbands disappeared, Olena and Olesya are in constant contact, trying to find out what happened to them. No one gives us any official confirmation. Olesya and I wrote letters together to the security service of Ukraine. We constantly receive the same answer, that the Russian side does not provide any information. There is no confirmation of any kind. Natalia says the lack of information is unbearable, but she hasn't lost hope that she'll one day be able to hug her sons again.
What can I say? Honestly, I try to smile and not show my emotions. I take fewer walks so that no one asks what's going on. If they do, my head starts to hurt and I run away. I don't want to be seen.
Was one grieving mother speaking to DW in Ukraine. I'd like to get across now to our correspondent, Karolina Chamoy, joining us from Kiev. Karolina, Ukraine is trying to mobilize more of its population for military service, including those who are living abroad. Can you tell us more about this recruitment drive?
Yes, this new mobilization law, Claire, has different elements. One of them is that all men between 18 and 60 years old are obliged to register with Ukraine's military. And not only that, they have to carry their registration paperwork on them at all times, because Ukrainian officials are allowed to ask them anytime, anywhere about this registration paperwork, and they have to be able to show them that it's up to date. If it's not, they would have to pay pay a fee, and they would have also to immediately search for a registration center and register. But not only that, also, as you mentioned, men of a service age living abroad, they will not be able to renew their passports at Ukrainian consulates abroad without doing this paperwork, without producing the up-to-date paperwork and having a registration with Ukraine's military. So this is also an opportunity for the Ukrainian government to know how many people, how many men between 18 and 60 years old they have abroad who they could potentially call in if they really need them. The aim of all this, Claire, is of course to make the whole recruiting procedure more transparent and also more efficient.
And I understand, Carolina, that some of these measures have been controversial. Is President Zelensky risking losing support for the war because of these?
He probably is. He has already lost a lot of popularity here in the country. You probably remember, Claire, back then in 2022, when the war started, his popularity was about 90%, 90. And this year, that means 2 years after the war started in February 2024, his popularity has dropped to 64%. And this new mobilization law will definitely not make him more popular. Quite the contrary. Also, he has made some political changes here in Ukraine a couple of weeks ago that have not made him popular, like, for example, asking his commander-in-chief back then, General Zaluzhny, to get off that position and putting General Zursky as the new commander-in-chief, a man that is not as popular as his predecessor.
Let's turn now to the news of the day. As we've heard earlier, U.S. President Joe Biden has signed that aid package for Ukraine into law. He said the first shipments of weapons would get underway in a matter of hours. How has that news been received in Kyiv?
The reactions have been very, very positive, Claire, not only from President Zelensky, but also from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Kuleba, and also the Chief of Staff, Mr. Yermak. Let me just read to you the last communication of President Zelensky on this. He said, now we will do everything to compensate for the 6 months that have passed in this debate and doubt. We must turn what the Russian occupier has managed to do over this time and what Putin is planning now against him. So as you can see, 6 months of debate between the Ukrainian government and the U.S. government. There have been a lot of conversation, and this really feels like a relief here in Ukraine, and all the reactions have been positive, also from civilians and from soldiers who feel that they have the support of the United States again.
Carolina, thank you for that. That is our correspondent, Carolina Chumoy, in Kyiv.